Alright, welcome back everyone. It's New Mutator, and I'm going to be bringing you Game 2 in Myth Kickballers Week 6. So it is 1.7.2 gameplay yet again as we continue with the series between Giant Killer General and his right-hand henchman, Kruniak, who are going to be squaring off together with kickball-style picked teams. So of course, a couple of differences I believe. So Renwood was taken out of the previous, out of the match essentially because he was booted by Kruniak, and of course, I don't think he's going to rejoin at any point. But so private, no, not private, professional killer and Kremisi, Funky, Sam the Butcher, Dumb, Thor, and I believe that's Kirk are all on Giant Killer General's team. And for Kruniak, he's got kind of the same team, except he's got Valky as well. So Shadow, myself, Dak or DAC, with some other stuff in his name. Interestingly enough, HW, Sasper, and Mercadon also in the game for him. So yeah, so my purpose in casting these, in addition to the videos that I've already kind of put on my channel, is that the videos on my channel are played from my personal point of view while playing these games. They're from kind of my perspective while I was playing them. And so now what I'm going to do is kind of go over these games and look at how they played out from kind of a bird's eye observer perspective. And I do apologize because the sound in the previous video had been altered significantly without my realizing it, because I was using a new build of 1.8, which was build 413, I believe, which is basically scales the sound levels differently in kind of a more intuitive way, so you can change them. So before, when you change the sound levels, it wasn't scaled. It's hard for me to explain because I don't have like the technical vocabulary to do so, but the way it was scaled was, I believe, I want to say, like the difference between like a geometric progression and like a what's the other one? Oh gosh. Well, okay. So in other words, like you went from 100% to like 87% to like, I don't know, 66% to 50%. Like there were only like a handful of options for you. But now, when you scale it, you can go up like by percentage points, by single percentage points, instead of like 15% at a time. So just to give you an idea of like how that works. So it's game on, and yeah, let's look at these teams. It looks like a couple of these units are left behind by Funky. I'm not sure if you realize he had those or not. And yeah, I'm going to leave the chat up because now you can see the chat from both teams instead of just from the one team, which is another reason why it's cool to be able to do it not just from my perspective, but also from an observer perspective as well, which is kind of what we're doing here. And in addition to that, we can also zoom out a lot more, so we can kind of see more of the battlefield and get a sense of the action, kind of from an angle where we can see more information, which is pretty cool, I think. So Kruniak does have all three Tro. It looks like Giant Killer General has the Tro for his team as well. And here's something interesting: is Giant Killer General's team is trying to move up to take this hill and this hill, and I think they might be able to do that. I believe that's what Giant Killer General is attempting to do right now. And I think that's what they're gonna. I have a feeling that's what the plan is anyway. And oh man, look at that moonwalking Tro. That was pretty sorry. It's hard for me to see exactly how that went, but I think it went pretty well for Kruniak's team, because Giant Killer General did lose one of his Tro, although these two remaining Tro aren't too bad. And Yeah, you know, I think that went really well for Kruniak's team, all in all. And I think, but the other thing to consider is, I think Giant Killer General's team has a slightly better positioning here. Although it's kind of hard to say. You know, because it's hard to see if like what the relative, you know, height of these hills are, you know, when compared with each other. Because I know when playing from this perspective, it seemed as if they were kind of higher up than I was. But you know, when looking at it from this perspective, it seems like, you know, my Solus are higher up than these are. So you know, it's kind of curious. Don't know what the exact topological differences are. So Shadow is going to attempt to basically dodge this. I think he did a pretty good job of, you know, minimizing the damage he took in that exchange and preventing excessive damage to himself. But this is the area that I really want to be concerned with, is where these Tro are for these teams here, and then, you know, Professional Killer kind of on his own there, since Mercadon is way back here, not doing that much just yet, and then Shadow is up here. So this is kind of an area that I wasn't really privy to while playing it. I didn't really see how that happened, because I think Professional Killer was able to kind of run in and deal significant damage, but I couldn't quite see that happening. You know, but as long as Kruniak is here, he should be able to prevent that, since these fetch are pretty squishy. They're pretty vulnerable. And who has the Solus? I guess Valky has these Solus here. Just gonna do some. So Mercadon running in there doing a little bit of damage. So that really helped us out a lot, I think. And I guess I took a little bit of damage myself on my Solus. But I want to stay focused on this side, since I really didn't see anything happening with over here. Okay, so here we have Shadow moving down. I don't know, did he lose a fetch? It's hard for me to tell, because he only has 3, whereas I thought he had 4. So maybe he did lose a fetch, although I didn't quite see how that happened. You know, it's possible. It's very possible, but that's going to give the advantage on this side to Professional Killer, although these Solus might be able to keep things interesting. I think this Solus is enough to countervail, you know, a one fetch advantage. Plus, you know, you have a couple of these Morts who are here also, in addition to, you know, beefier, I guess, melee defense with those mauls, as the only mauls on Giant Killer General's team are right here. And yeah, I guess if these forces kind of moved in with these forces, they might have sort of an advantage on, I guess, this force there, since Mercadon and myself seem to be kind of on this flank by ourselves. Has anything happened? I don't think so. I think it's just been kind of back and forth, trying to you know, test the enemy. Oh, Dak actually taking a little bit of damage. Interesting shot there. I didn't quite see. Oh, and Funky actually took some himself. Wow, look at these guys. Croc also having taken some damage. Looks like Shadow moved in there just to block that mortar shot. He is going to retreat a little bit, and all of a sudden it looks like Professional Killer and Shadow, nope, they're going to back out there. They just want to see if they can exploit an advantage. They don't actually want to open themselves up to attack. So that's why it's it's not exactly aggressive. It's more or less kind of passive. But yeah, all of these fetch here. What the heck? Did you see that? Oh my goodness, that was Thor with that beautiful shot, and that really hurt. That really hurt Kruniak's team a lot, because that took out 2 fetch. So that mortar dwarf is definitely worth his salt. And Kruniak kind of chastising his team, saying, you know, you need to not be doing that. You need to make sure that you don't give them the advantage like that. And yeah, another Soulless goes down, so Thor actually handling that mortar really well. And even though Kruniak's team is kind of up in percentages, they are looking a little bit, well, let's just say that Giant Killer General's team has a fetch advantage, and that's looking pretty good for them, as fetch kind of trump every other kind of artillery type on this map, including ranged units such as Soulless. Although Dak with a nice shot, I think he was able to take out, who was that, maybe Funky's mortar? No, not Funky, it was somebody else. Funky has a couple of mortars, it seems, on this side. So it looks like this flank is mobilizing. And, oh, another nice shot from Dak, taking out somebody else's mortar. So that was pretty good. Whew, that was close. HW almost losing his mortar. All of a sudden, though, Valky is in trouble, as these fetch from Professional Killer are kind of moving in, although they do back off. And what the heck? Did you see that? There was like a massive shot. Was that Dak again? I think that was Dak again, getting a beautiful shot on those Soulless and taking them out. So all of a sudden, we're looking pretty good. 68, 85%. How can we lose, right?
Captured.
Well, I'll tell you how we can lose. We could lose if Professional Killer all of a sudden decides he wants to get involved, which he may be thinking that. I don't know. Sasper is doing a pretty good job of keeping him from getting involved. And but Shadow needs to be careful. He may lose that. Yep, he loses his last fetch. So all of a sudden we don't have any fetch here in the kind of the south and mid. And while all this action is taking place, if you want to see this up close and personal, just watch watch the video from my perspective. As all of a sudden, though, the percentages seem to be pretty close. And Dak is going to attempt to move in here and try to do some damage, although Professional Killer is going to get a shot off. Oh no, Dak loses his mortar. And Valky's Soulless are in a pretty bad spot here. They do manage to avoid getting taken out, but Professional Killer is doing a pretty good job of keeping this close. So Kruniak did lose this guy right here, that Trode there. And, you know, so what happened was Murkerdon is going to try to back up Kruniak while I'm trying to do this flank attack, which I think, you know, could have been pretty successful. And here he goes. Now he's following me. So these guys here, these two Tro here, are kind of able to get into our faces, and they are going to take out, look at that, both of those mortars go down simultaneously. All of a sudden it looks really bad. It looks really bad. I'm able to focus down that mortar dwarf, but at the same time I need to be moving this way, except these two guys here from Kirk are able to push me away from this battle, because I wanted to be raining down barbs from another angle on these fetch and Tro, and by doing so that could have kept us in the game, but since I lost like almost all of my units, I'm not able to be effective at all. And now Giant Killer General is going to move in and clean up Murkerdon, it seems. Look at that, how many kills that Berserk has. So Kirk able to be a professional assassin this game. And it looks like Professional Killer did lose a fetch, but I think he was able to kind of look at the kills on these fetch. Like, they're just ridiculous. Oh, Kremisi has a fetch. I didn't notice that. So yeah, these fetch just decimated our team, destroyed us. It was ridiculous. I think that's how we lost, was just the enemy fetch advantage. They were able to capitalize on that and funnel all of our units into their striking so that they could basically take us out. So yeah, let's look at the damage really quick. Looks like Professional Killer was able to get damage, which not too surprising since he had 4 fetch. He had even more damage than Giant Killer General, who had the Tro. And he got most of his damage on the enemy Tro. So that just gives you kind of an idea of like how that worked out. But yeah, a lot of these players getting above 100 damage, which is incredible. 761 damage for them. But you know, we have to keep in mind that this will be changed in the future, in a future build for the Myth engine. The damage figures will be more accurately reflected in the stats. So Thor with 122 damage. Let me see if I can pull up the perm here and see what the losses are respectively. So Dom actually not doing too well. Sam the Butcher had sort of high damage, but he didn't do so hot in terms of ratios. Funky didn't do too well either. But everyone else on Giant Killer General's team managed to do pretty spectacularly. Even Cremisi, who didn't have really high ratios, but managed to get a lot of damage in under his belt. Thor doing really well, especially with that Mortar Dwarf. I think he managed to snipe a number of critical units. And then, of course, you know, Kirk managing to, with I think almost all of his kills was on that Berserk. So that was pretty incredible, assassinating on his part. But yeah, most of the damage, not most of it, but a great deal of it is attributable to these 2 players here. For our team, looks like HW had a lot of damage, almost more than anybody else, although Mercadon managed to get a lot of damage with his fetch. But in the end, his fetch were taken out by Giant Killer General's skillful use of his Tro, coordinating with his team's units on this flank over here. And Kruniak actually did pretty well also, but I think he was let down by some of his players, like Sasper wasn't able to pull out big figures. Valky had a lot of Solace, but wasn't able to do much with them for much of the game. You know, I think I did pretty okay. I could have done better, but you know, that's not too bad. I think Shadow, I think, was, I don't want to say he was the weak link, but he didn't really make his fetch worth it, which I think if he had, things could have turned out differently. And Dak actually had a couple good shots, but his damage isn't very high either. But you know, you have to take the long view. You have to see how these units enabled other units on the team to perform, and you know, take that into account as well in terms of individual play. But so this is kind of an interesting game because it's sort of like what happened in the previous game, where in game 1, Giant Killer General's team was up substantially. They had the advantage, and they were playing defensively and forcing Giant Killer Generals, or forcing Kruniak's team to assume kind of an offense. Whereas with this game, you know, that kind of dynamic was the same. You know, Giant Killer General controlled the objective, which was this middle flag area for pretty much the entire game. But Kruniak's team kind of had the advantage for the majority of the game, and they were again forced to act. But it went from relatively even team figures, you know, team percentages, to all of a sudden 31% to 10%, you know, at the end, by the game's end. So it seemed like they kind of overcame, they overcame like a great discrepancy in terms of team. I guess, you know, just overall team strength, just kind of similar to how Kruniak's team was able to do so in the previous game. So that's kind of interesting to me to see that, see how that works in these games. So yeah, now the series is going to be tied at 1 game apiece, and we're going to move into game number 3. Now, I had neglected to save game number 3, so I'm indebted to Funky for sending me that. So keep that in mind when we watch that in the next film. So hope you enjoy these videos, and we'll see you then.